Hi, everybody. It's Wednesday, the 25th of October, 9:33 GMT. I want to digress a little bit from the usual, update from, the front lines. Siggy said something. Siggy and I were walking around downtown last night just to get out a little bit, and it really is a little bit ghostly. It's not entirely empty, but it's largely empty, and most of the places are closed. We were there like at 8:30 when things normally would be hopping, and they weren't. And then Siggy says something to me like, she feel what it, she maybe this is all fake. Maybe there won't be a war. My knee jerk reaction is to say, no, of course, there'll definitely be a war, no doubt about it. But it got me to thinking, how, in under what circumstances could a war be avoided? And of course, the obvious answer is diplomacy. And when you start to think about it, there's a great deal of diplomacy underway here. You may have been following that the IDF they regularly destroy the runways at the Aleppo and Damascus airport to forestall deliveries from Iran that'll be transshipped to Lebanon. And then as a in an act of brotherly defiance, the Syrians fire a couple of missiles that don't hurt anybody in Israel, and then to show that the Syrians, that the Israelis don't take crap from anybody, they fire a few shells back and don't hurt anybody there, and end of story. And I just want to point out that it's just as difficult, if not more difficult, to lob a shot at the enemy and not hurt anybody than it is to hurt them. It takes the same amount of skill, maybe more. So this is what I'm trying to say. This is all, if not prearranged like professional wrestling. The general guidelines are understood, and and when you think about it, also the IDF cannot fly freely, unencumbered into Syrian airspace. There are Russians there, Russian air defense systems. I think the SAM 400 system is there, which is highly sophisticated and poses a very realistic threat to America's fifth generation most advanced F-35 fighter. So these are not toys. So there's obviously cooperation with the Russians. They let the IDF fly in. They'll let them take out the runways, and then they know they won't do anything else, and that'll be the end of the story. So, and that's one of the reasons, of course, the Israelis have been very, very discreet in what to the outside observer might seem particularly cheap, supporting the Ukrainians. We have, 20% of our population is Russian speaking. We have deep and extensive relations with Russia. It's not so easy for us to negotiate the Ukrainian war with one foot in the west and one foot in the east. So that's a little tricky for us. But I know for a fact that we've been supporting the Ukrainians, particularly in the cyber theater. But aside from that small example of diplomacy, there are other examples of diplomacy. The Qataris, who have been they support Iran, and they've supported the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And they've taken some heat from the Saudis because of that. They've been expelled from this league, that league. I don't know exactly, but they're not in the ins with most of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, or certainly even the Muslim countries. Well, obviously the Muslim countries, they're in bed with the Iranians. The Iranians, of course, are not Arabs. They are Muslim, but they're not Arabs. And we haven't seen a constellation like this, where the United States is clearly sending some muscle, and the Saudis and the United States, the Saudis and the Israelis are talking quite regularly. There's an open channel there, so that's clear. There's food and supplies from Riyadh getting to the Gazans through Israeli territory. So that's high level. That's high level cooperation. The Egyptians, the Jordanians for sure. And, Israel has always, throughout history, go back to Cyrus, Darius, Nebuchadnezzar, whatever, Cleopatra, the Roman. We're strategically located, but we have no real strategic say in anything. And we have in the past. The most recent example of us having to, heel to the command of the Uber power was in 1991 when H.W. Bush invaded or fought in an attempt to, in a successful attempt to free Kuwait from Saddam Hussein's grip. Formed a coalition, one of whose terms or partners was the Israelis, who were commanded to sit on their hands. As these enormous Scud missiles landed in Tel Aviv, one of these missiles has, I don't know, a ton of TNT. It's nothing like what it takes out a whole block. And anti-missile defenses were not what they are today back in 1991. And so Israel often has had to, and many times in its history, when the Seleucids and the Romans and the Greeks and the Persians and the Macedonians, there's plenty of examples where we just have to go. We have to go along with the flow. And one of the go along with the flow pills that we may have to swallow, and this is I emphasize that this would be a grand strategy of diplomacy. Diplomacy has all sorts of levels. After all, diplomacy is just international politics. And politics, of course, I don't know who defined this, is the art of the possible. And so diplomacy is international politics, on a large scale. And if, let's say, this grouping of everybody, of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, Russia's in cahoots here. The United States, certainly the Israelis, the countries that have peace agreements, and we'll call them the Abraham group, the Abraham countries. If they could form some sort of alliance to make it clear that the Iranians really were boxed in, and offer them in the same breath the carrot of saying, okay, look, it's time to rejoin the Brotherhood of Nations. You're going to have to disarm the proxies, and you're going to have to stop mucking around in our part of the world. You have to be, a team player as opposed to a spoiler. And let's say again, this is the grand strategy. I'm just sort of, waxing, euphoric here. I don't know, utopic. I don't know what the word is. It's possible, and that the pill the Israelis have to suffer is that last massacre is the last round of Palestinian Zionist conflict. A bitter pill to swallow, no doubt. But keep in mind, Yitzhak Shamir sat on his hands and did nothing and didn't dispatch one IDF observer plane in the face of these enormous missiles that were raining down on his own country. Huge missiles. So, that's, it's a possibility. It's remote. and it's a low probability thing, I think. But what's more likely, hopefully has a higher probability, is that we'll form a united front. And that basically means a defensive alliance. The alliance will let the IDF remove both regional proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas. And the alliance will care for the displaced war refugees. That's how I see it. One more example of diplomacy before I sign off here is that the Qataris arranged for the release of 2 American citizens that were held hostage by Hamas. That's it's a strong signal to the Abraham alliance that they delivered and they can deliver again. And they're terrified of this alliance because they're on the outs with America, who's the ringleader of the alliance, and they want to get back in America's favor. They see where the cards are falling. It's the Abraham alliance against Iran, and if the Iranians don't recognize this and seek to exploit it, that's a different story. But in answer to Sigi's, response to Sigi's observation, that's how it could end. And don't think that the Americans aren't able to say to their close and deep allies, the Israelis, yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, the last round ends in the opponent's favor, but everybody comes out a winner in this because, if even in the immediate case, and we do root out the Hamas and Hezbollah, we're still going to need a lot of help to rebuild, something there that we can do business with and have peace with. That's okay. So that's the end of today's Ramble On session. Stay informed, stay strong, stay in touch. Stay safe. Bye-bye for now.